Yeah.
ran from the pressure and the stress. And my mum will tell you, you know, another narrative, you know, he tried to break your spirit, and it's quite difficult things. When I look back and I see, they were very, very difficult for the kid, the things I experienced. And those go to make you as well who you are today.
Yeah, to make you. Yeah. Now, I've got a quotation. I'm not quite sure I understand it fully. It's from C.S. Lewis, right? And C.S. Lewis said that when you come to faith, that grace works backwards. Grace works backwards. And so the very things that you think were totally negative when they happened, somehow from your position of being in grace, you start to look at them as in a different way. What do you think? Do you agree with that?
Well, it's even worse. It's even more powerful than that for me.
Yeah.
Grace working backwards, but that was evident to me in my life, because even as far, I have a friend who was in prison with in 1981. In every instance where my eyes saw things, and it's like as if something was active in me, recording and seeing people and enshrining them in who I was. And I can look back over my life and I can see that. And it's like you say, grace works backwards. And you know the old poem that says the two footprints, and there's only one set. And the Lord said, that was when I carried you. And as I can see that train in my life, even during when I was in prison, I always remember people. I would remember the pain. I would remember the damage. I would see it. It was like as if I had watching eyes to see these things. And I have a friend still. Most of my friends from the original prison times, beginning in 1981, and even before that, I still have connection with them, and God brings them back. It's amazing. I would meet people who I wouldn't have seen for 40 years, and by the back of their head would have recognized them.
Right.
Well, I was with Bernard the other day, and I noticed this guy at a traffic light and a traffic stop we were at, and I looked over and I said to him, "Hey, you're from Finglas, aren't you?" And he said, "I haven't lived in Finglas for 40 years." And I was able to say to him, "I know who you are, I remember." And I spoke to him, and he was like, "Wow." And when we drove away, Bernard said to me, "Lucky you weren't a policeman. You couldn't." It's like as if just as that grace was active. That's the way I would explain it for my life.
Yeah.
It's been amazing for connections and for journey.
Yeah.
And not passing the time that, yes, he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And it's like as if he lives outside of time, and in some way his intrusion into my timeline of my life.
Sure. And of course,
palpable.
The story of Joseph is like saying, you know, Joseph said to his brothers, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." And that's the amazing reflection on his own very, very sad story. But let's go up to where you are now. Because now you're completely at the other end of. You're still in the same place. You're still in the same territory where you were as a boy.
Balaclava Drive.
You're still on Balaclava Drive. Do you remember the occasion when I came to stay at your house, and my car was loaded up, ready to go on the ferry, and I had to leave at 4 the next morning to get to the ferry, something like that. And you said, "You can't leave anything in your car because it will be nicked tonight." And I said, "No, there's nothing of value." You said, "No, if they don't want it, they'll sling it on the road." So we had to bodily unpack my entire car into your living room and then load it again at 3 in the morning. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So that always sticks in my mind about when you talk about Balaclava Drive. You still live there, man. You still live there. But now grace has worked through your life, using every single circumstance, every single connection, every single negative experience to make you into a powerful, functioning minister on the streets of Dublin to this day. Is that an amazing thought? Isn't that amazing? So just tell us about what you're doing right now. Yeah, you told us the story about you really taking the role of the the prisoner going into the drug lord's ex-prisoner going into this drug king's territory and talking to him about the power of God. But tell us about what the sort of stuff you do now. You know, what do you do to earn your wage? What are you up to?
No, you probably see I'm in my office here I work as a community employment supervisor.
Right.
I used to work as the outreach coordinator for rehab, but now we have about 30 guys. My friend is the manager here. He's a pastor as well. It's not a Christian organization, and the other guy, he's a godly guy as well. It's just amazing what God has put us in. We have an opportunity to work with 30 boys and girls here and just restart their lives, reinitiate them. But really, that's my day job. But really, my identity, to be quite frank, is not within this brilliant job I have here, which I love and I really fit in. But my identity is to be radical and to be contagious with the gospel of grace, and to be a minister of that gospel, and to minister in the power of the Holy Spirit. And that's what I do. That's the Christian way of saying it. But everything in my life and my wife's life and our daughter's life is about connecting with people. You know, I'll give you the quote I was thinking about when you spoke about C.S. Lewis. Wes Stafford, the CEO of Compassion International, says that impressions made in childhood are like handprints in wet cement.
Okay.
They fuse into the character and the identity of that slab. And so that's what's happened to me. And maybe it's more than just being handprints. It's maybe I've been fused and molded by what has happened in my life, but also by the hands. Within God's hands, Ken. You know that, don't you?
Sure.
We're instruments in his hands. And that's a great thing today, that I'm not on my will. I'm not chasing my desires. I try to place myself in his hand and say, thy will be done, Lord. Today, I give myself to you. And like what he does is what I want to see. I want to see those people who are born into my memory, those broken people, those tragic cases, those sad cases, those people who are scarred and wounded by the things they've encountered. I want to bring the gospel of grace to them, the balm of Gilead. That's a real preachy thing to say. Well, that's the way it is. Every single person I meet, I feel, is a candidate for God's love and God's grace, and it's upon me to deliver that by whatever medium possible, whether that's poetry, song, movie, a hug, preach the gospel, give testimony, pray with them, whatever it is to be effective minister of his grace, to be contagious. The scripture says he makes his ministers a flame of fire. My job is to put the place on fire, start a few fires.
Start a few fires. That's it. You're like a small boy in a dry forest with a box of matches. Let's get this baby going.
Yeah. Woo!
So yeah, well, I can testify to the truth of what you've said. You've given the general terms, but I've seen you leading a church in the rougher parts of Dublin, and I would say pretty much the entire congregation were on drugs or just out of drugs.
Ex-criminals, ex-gangsters.
Is that about right?
Yeah. Look, listen.
So your churches are not nice places to be in.
They are, though, Ken. You have to testify.
Oh, you know what I mean? Yes, sure.
They're full of love. It's like
Amen.
Forgiven much. He's forgiven much, loves much. And our church is so full of love. Everybody comes and says,
"Good,
wow, this is like," and that's the truth of it, you know.
And I've seen you at home as well. As I said, I've stayed at your house, and I've seen you putting people up on the sofa who are coming out of an episode and caring for them.
Is that you? Is that you you're talking about?
That wasn't me on that, but you were putting me up as well. But that was a different kind of need. No, I was just saying you're right in the middle of all this, and I've seen you pulling into halfway houses and picking up ex-prisoners to take them to meetings. So I've seen all that kind of stuff, and driving the bus, doing the homeless run, and the soup kitchen stuff in the
We were
centre.
feeding 400 a day during the COVID crisis. That was great. It was really, and you know what? Those 400 people, that would teach you gratitude. They would come up and say, I want to say to you, thank you very much for coming out to feed us. The city is closed to us. It's like there's no room at the inn in the world for them. And they came every day. And the things they would say to you, you just didn't expect it. It was super.
Okay.
Make you weep, honestly, we used to cry sometimes when we hear what they'd say to us. Great.
Yeah, I saw you crying. You were looking. We were watching a documentary on TV about ex-addicts in Dublin, and you just turned quietly and said, "Oh," and somebody was speaking. They said, "Oh, they've died now." You just said that they've died now. So they took part in this documentary, and then just a little bit subsequently, they died of an overdose, and I saw this great sort of sadness on you and your wife, and because you're right in the middle of it, aren't you? You're right in the middle of all this. You know that Bible verse I've been reflecting on this week? It says, defend the cause of the weak. Defend the cause of the weak. And I know there are other things in that verse, but if you just took that one bit, I think that's what God's put on your heart, isn't it? To just, in whatever way you can do it, to defend the cause of those.
That's God's heart. It is God's heart, Ken. It's the widow, the oppressed, the orphan, the weak, the power, the foolish things of this world. Yeah. That's his heart. He chose the foolish. He chose the weak. And even the base things. Sometimes people are trapped in the bondage of, like, people's lives are arrested at an early stage and they're brought into base things. They're taught those things, those horrible things.
Yeah.
And it's just to not be afraid to have an affinity with those people. I used to pick up the prostitutes. I don't like, my mum always used that word, just the girls, I used to pick them up in my car and like, you never get a better bunch of girls. Like, they really have loyalty to each other, unity. They protect you, and they would never impugn your motives. Never, absolutely never. They just, so yeah.
Bless you.
The stories don't know her.
No, that's all right. That's okay. It's wonderful to talk to you. We'll wrap it up now. It's a great honor to talk to you, Sean. I really admire you, and I really appreciate
Dr. Baker. Please now, come on, Dr. Baker.
I appreciate what God's done in you, and how the story of your life and the tenor of what you're doing now reflects how God has dealt with you personally. And really, it seems to me that God has dealt with you in a certain way, and that's the way you deal with other people. So you're being true. You're being true to what you've received. So it's wonderful to see. So God bless you, sir. And thank you very much for giving us some time. Okay. All right.
Enjoy today when you can.
I will. All right. Talk to you again soon. All right. Thanks, mate.